The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store in Oklahoma City, territory of Oklahoma, and Beatrice Sullivan stepped down into the dusty street with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a bundle wrapped in brown paper that she clutched to her chest like it contained all the treasures of the world. It was the spring of 1889, and the land run had brought thousands of settlers streaming into the newly opened territory, all desperate for a fresh start and a piece of land to call their own. Beatrice was no different, though her circumstances were perhaps more desperate than most. At 23 years old, she had answered an advertisement for a housekeeper position at the Double J Ranch, owned by a man named Adam Jenkins. The position promised room, board, and modest wages, which was more than she had in Philadelphia after her father's debts had consumed everything the family owned. The quilt in the brown paper bundle had taken her 6 months to complete, working by candlelight after her factory shifts had ended. Every stitch represented a hope, a dream, a prayer for something better. The pattern was a traditional wedding ring design, though Beatrice had no prospects of marriage. She had sewn it because it gave her hands something to do besides worry, and because somewhere deep in her heart she still believed that beautiful things mattered, even when everything else was falling apart. The general store proprietor, a weathered man with kind eyes, gave her directions to the Double J Ranch. "About 8 miles northwest," he said, squinting at her city dress and thin shoes. "You planning to walk it, miss?" "I suppose I must," Beatrice replied, straightening her spine. "Unless there is a wagon heading that way." "Adam Jenkins was in town earlier," the proprietor said, "but he headed back already. Probably didn't know you were arriving today." Beatrice felt her stomach sink. The letter had specified mid-May, and here she was on May 15th, right on time. But perhaps ranchers did not keep track of dates the way city people did. "I will manage," she said, though she had no idea how. "Tell you what," the proprietor said. "My son is making a delivery out that direction in about an hour. You can ride along if you do not mind waiting." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you. That is very kind." She waited on the wooden bench outside the store, watching the organized chaos of Oklahoma City. The town was barely more than a collection of hastily erected buildings and tents, but it thrummed with energy and possibility. Cowboys rode past, their horses kicking up dust. Wagons loaded with supplies creaked down the rutted street. Women in calico dresses hurried along the wooden sidewalks, and children darted between buildings, their laughter bright in the afternoon air. The proprietor's son turned out to be a boy of perhaps 16, who said very little, but helped her into the wagon bed with a shy politeness that reminded Beatrice of her younger brother, dead now these 3 years from influenza. She settled herself among the crates and barrels, holding her precious bundle close, and tried not to think about how far she was from everything she had ever known. The landscape rolling past was nothing like Philadelphia. Here the land stretched endlessly in all directions, covered in prairie grass that rippled like water in the wind. The sky seemed impossibly large, dominating everything, so blue it almost hurt to look at. Occasionally they passed a homestead, raw and new, with freshly turned earth and a sod house or a canvas tent. Everyone was starting from nothing here, Beatrice realized. Perhaps that meant she would fit in after all. The Double J Ranch, when they finally reached it, was more substantial than she had expected. A sturdy 2-story house sat atop a gentle rise, built from timber that must have cost a fortune to transport. A large barn stood nearby, along with several outbuildings and a complex of corrals. Cattle dotted the surrounding grassland, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Beatrice knew nothing about ranching, but even she could tell this was a successful operation. The boy helped her down from the wagon and set her carpetbag on the ground. "Good luck, miss," he said, then turned the wagon around and headed back the way they had come. Beatrice picked up her bag and walked toward the house, her heart hammering. She had come so far, risked everything on a single advertisement in a newspaper. What if Adam Jenkins took one look at her and decided she would not do? What if the position had already been filled? What if this had all been a terrible mistake? She climbed the 3 steps to the wide porch and knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. "He is out with the herd," a voice called. Beatrice turned to see a man emerging from the barn. He was older, perhaps 60, with a grizzled beard and a rolling gait that suggested decades in the saddle. "You must be the housekeeper from back east," he said. "Yes, I am Beatrice Sullivan. Frank Morrison, foreman here. Adam rode out about an hour ago. One of the hands spotted some cattle wandering toward the creek and he went to check on them. Should be back by sundown." "I see." Beatrice looked around uncertainly. "Should I wait here?" "House is unlocked," Frank said. "Why do not you go on in and make yourself at home? Your room is upstairs, first door on the right. Adam said to tell you that if you arrived while he was out." "Thank you." Beatrice hesitated. "Is there anything I should be doing? Any supper to prepare?" Frank laughed, not unkindly. "Miss, you just traveled halfway across the country. Take the evening to settle yourself. There will be plenty of work starting tomorrow, I promise you that." Beatrice nodded and entered the house, stepping into a large front room that served as both parlor and dining area. The furniture was sturdy and masculine, clearly built for function rather than beauty, but everything was surprisingly clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and large windows let in the afternoon light. The kitchen was visible through an archway, equipped with a modern cast iron stove that made Beatrice's spirits lift slightly. At least she would have proper tools to work with. She climbed the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the quiet house. The first door on the right opened into a small bedroom with a single bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the prairie. It was sparse but clean, and it was hers. Beatrice set down her carpetbag and the bundle containing her quilt, then sat on the bed and let out a long, shaky breath. She had made it. Whatever came next, at least she had made it this far. After washing her face and changing out of her travel-stained dress into something fresher, Beatrice went back downstairs. It seemed wrong to simply sit and wait, so she explored the kitchen, taking inventory of the supplies. The pantry was well stocked with basics: flour, cornmeal, beans, salt pork, dried beef, coffee, sugar, and canned goods. Fresh meat hung in the cool cellar, access through a trap door in the kitchen floor. There were eggs in a basket on the counter and fresh milk in a covered pail. Whoever had been managing the cooking had at least kept the supplies organized. Beatrice decided to make biscuits for supper. It was simple enough, and it would show her new employer that she was capable and industrious. She stoked up the fire in the stove, mixed the dough, and had the biscuits baking when she heard boots on the porch. The front door opened, and a man stepped inside. Adam Jenkins was not what Beatrice had expected. The advertisement had given no description, and she had imagined someone older, perhaps weathered and gruff like Frank Morrison. Instead, the man who stood in the doorway was probably no more than 30, tall and lean with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his clothes, and sweat stained his shirt, but there was something almost elegant in the way he moved, a natural grace that made Beatrice suddenly very aware of her flour-dusted apron and the wisps of hair escaping from her bun. "Miss Sullivan," he said, and his voice was deeper than she had expected, with a rough edge that suggested years of shouting orders across open land. You made it. Yes, sir. I arrived this afternoon. Adam pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. I apologize for not being here to greet you. We had some cattle getting into trouble. Your foreman explained. I hope everything is all right. Just young steers being stupid, testing fences. Nothing we could not handle. He glanced toward the kitchen, and Beatrice saw his nostrils flare slightly. Is that biscuits I smell? Yes, sir. I thought I should make myself useful. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. Well, I appreciate it. I have been living on Frank's cooking for the past month, and that man can burn water. He hung his hat on a peg by the door. Give me 10 minutes to wash up, and then maybe we can talk over supper. Discuss your duties and such, of course. Beatrice watched him climb the stairs, then hurried back to the kitchen to check the biscuits. They were perfect, golden brown and fragrant. She made gravy from the pan drippings of the salt pork she found and set the table for two, unsure of the proper protocol. Was she meant to eat with her employer or separately? The advertisement had said nothing about such details. When Adam came back downstairs, he had changed into a clean shirt, and his hair was damp from washing. He looked younger somehow, less intimidating, though Beatrice's heart still fluttered nervously as he sat down at the table. This looks wonderful, he said, and the genuine pleasure in his voice made Beatrice relax slightly. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Beatrice barely tasted the food, too nervous to have much appetite, but Adam ate with the focused intensity of a man who worked hard physical labor every day. These are the best biscuits I have had in months, he said finally. Maybe years. Thank you, sir. Please call me Adam. We are not formal out here. He reached for another biscuit. Tell me about yourself, Miss Sullivan. Your letter said you had experience keeping house. Yes, I managed my father's household after my mother died. That was 8 years ago when I was 15. I can cook, clean, do laundry, mend clothes, preserve food, and manage supplies. I am also decent with basic medical care if that is needed. Adam nodded. It is appreciated. The closest doctor is in Oklahoma City, and that is half a day's ride. What brought you out west? Beatrice hesitated, then decided honesty was best. My father passed away last winter. He had debts I did not know about. Everything was sold to pay them, and I was left with nothing. I was working in a textile factory, but the wages were barely enough to afford a room in a boarding house. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like an opportunity for something better. I am sorry about your father. Adam's voice was gentle. This is hard country, but it is fair. You work hard and it gives back. I hope you will find it a good place to start over. I hope so too. The work will not be easy, Adam continued. During the busy seasons, we have 6 hands living in the bunkhouse, plus Frank who has his own cabin. That is 7 men who need 3 meals a day. The house needs regular cleaning, and during harvest time, there is extra cooking for the crews. Laundry is once a week, usually Monday. I will pay you $15 a month plus room and board. If that seems fair. It was more than she had made at the factory, and the room and board made it feel like wealth. That is very generous. You will earn it, Adam said, but not unkindly. Can you start tomorrow? Of course. They finished the meal, and Beatrice cleaned up while Adam went outside to check on something in the barn. When she finally climbed the stairs to her small room, exhaustion crashed over her. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 3 dresses in the small wardrobe and placing her other items in the dresser. The brown paper bundle she saved for last, carefully unwrapping the quilt and spreading it across the bed. The colors glowed in the lamplight. Deep blues and rich reds, creamy whites and soft greens, all arranged in the interlocking circles of the wedding ring pattern. It was the finest thing Beatrice had ever made, and probably the finest thing she would ever own. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to give this quilt to someone who loved her, to wrap them both in it on cold nights, to build a life together as beautiful and complex as the pattern she had stitched. Then she shook her head at her own foolishness. She was a housekeeper now, nothing more. Romance was for girls who had prospects and dowries, not for women who had to work for their bread. She folded the quilt carefully and placed it in the bottom drawer of the dresser, where it would be safe. The work began at dawn the next morning. Beatrice woke to the sound of roosters and men's voices outside, the entire ranch coming to life with the sunrise. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs to find Adam already gone and Frank Morrison in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. "Oh, thank goodness," Frank said when he saw her. "I am useless with this thing." He gestured helplessly at the coffee pot. Beatrice smiled and took over, quickly getting a proper pot brewing. "How many for breakfast?" "7 total, including Adam. The boys usually eat around 6. It was already 5:30. Beatrice worked quickly, frying up salt pork and eggs, making more biscuits, and stirring together a pot of grits. By 6 o'clock, the men were filing in, hanging their hats by the door and taking seats at the long table. They were a mixed group, young and old, weathered and fresh-faced. They eyed Beatrice with curiosity but minded their manners, murmuring polite greetings before diving into the food. Adam came in last, and Beatrice noticed how the other men deferred to him naturally, waiting until he sat before they really began eating. He caught her eye and nodded, a gesture of approval that made her feel warm despite the morning chill. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Beatrice rose before dawn to make breakfast, then cleaned up while the men worked. Mid-morning, she tackled the housework, sweeping, dusting, making beds, doing whatever maintenance the house needed. Dinner, the main meal, was served at 1 o'clock when the men came in from the morning's work. Then more cleaning, preparation for supper, mending clothes, and whatever other tasks needed attention. Supper was simpler, served at 7, and then finally she had an hour or two to herself before exhaustion claimed her. It was hard work, harder than the factory had been, but it was also strangely satisfying. At the factory, Beatrice had been one interchangeable piece in a vast machine. Here, her work mattered directly. When she cooked a good meal, she saw the men's faces light up. When she mended a torn shirt, the cowboy who wore it thanked her personally. When she figured out how to get stubborn stains out of Adam's good shirt, he noticed and commented on it. Adam himself was often gone during the day, out managing the ranch operations, but he was always there for the evening meal. Beatrice found herself looking forward to those times, even though she usually ate in the kitchen while the men ate in the dining room. Sometimes, after the hands had gone back to the bunkhouse, Adam would linger in the kitchen while she cleaned up, talking about the day or asking her opinion on household matters. He treated her with a respect she had not expected, listening when she spoke and implementing her suggestions about organizing the pantry or adjusting the meal schedule. 3 weeks after her arrival, a late spring storm rolled in, dropping the temperature and bringing sheets of cold rain. Beatrice was preparing supper when Adam came in from the barn, soaked through and shivering. "The hands are staying in the bunkhouse tonight," he said, his teeth nearly chattering. "Too wet to come up to the house. Can you put together something I can take down to them?" "Of course." Beatrice was already pulling out bread and the leftover roast from dinner. "But first you need to get into dry clothes before you catch your death." Adam looked startled, as if no one had given him an order in years, but he nodded and headed upstairs. Beatrice made up plates for the men in the bunkhouse, covering them with a cloth, then turned her attention to the stew she had simmering for Adam's supper. She built up the fire in the main room, wanting to get some warmth into the house. When Adam came back down, he was in dry clothes but still shivering, his lips faintly blue. Beatrice frowned. "You need to warm up properly. Sit by the fire. I need to take this food to the men first." "You need to not collapse from cold," Beatrice said firmly. "I will take the food." "Where is the bunkhouse?" "You cannot go out in this weather. I am from Philadelphia. I have walked through worse." She was already pulling on her shawl. "Where is it?" Adam looked like he wanted to argue but finally gave in. "Straight down from the barn, about 50 yards. There is a lamp in the window. You cannot miss it." Beatrice took the covered plates and stepped out into the storm. The rain was indeed fierce, driving sideways in the wind, and within seconds she was soaked. But she kept her head down and pushed forward, finally seeing the golden glow of lamplight ahead. She knocked on the bunkhouse door and Frank opened it, his eyes widening in surprise. "Miss Sullivan, you should not be out in this. Someone has to feed you all," she said, handing him the plates. "There is enough for everyone. Stay warm." She hurried back to the house before Frank could protest further. Adam was sitting by the fire as she had ordered, but he stood when she came in, dripping water all over the floor. "You are soaked," he said, stating the obvious. "So were you." Beatrice's teeth were chattering now too. "I will be fine once I change." She hurried upstairs and changed into dry clothes, but the chill had seeped deep into her bones. When she came back down, Adam was ladling stew into 2 bowls. "Sit," he said, echoing her earlier command. "Eat something hot." They sat together by the fire, eating in companionable silence while the storm raged outside. The warmth slowly returned to Beatrice's body, and she found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. There was something peaceful about being in this warm house with the fire crackling and the rain drumming on the roof, sharing a simple meal with someone who understood the value of hard work and small comforts. "Thank you," Adam said suddenly, "for taking the food out. You did not have to do that." "You pay me to work," Beatrice said. "That includes making sure everyone is fed. Still." He set down his bowl and looked at her, really looked at her in a way that made her heart skip. "You are a good person, Beatrice Sullivan. I am glad you came here." The words were simple, but the sincerity in them made Beatrice's chest feel tight. "I am glad too," she managed to say. The storm lasted through the night, and in the morning, Beatrice woke to find the world transformed. The rain had stopped, but the temperature had dropped further, and a late-season frost covered everything in a delicate crystal coating. She dressed warmly and went downstairs to find Adam already in the kitchen, trying to get the stove going. "Morning," he said. "I figured I could at least get the fire started. Thank you." Beatrice took over and soon had breakfast preparations underway. The men came in stamping and blowing on their hands, grateful for the hot food and coffee. After breakfast, while Beatrice was cleaning up, she heard a commotion outside. Through the window, she saw the men gathered around something in the yard. Concerned, she dried her hands and went out to investigate. A young cow was lying on the ground, clearly in distress. Adam was kneeling beside her, his face grim. "What happened?" Beatrice asked Frank. "She got caught in some wire during the storm, panicked, and hurt herself pretty bad. Plus I think she is sick, probably will not make it." Beatrice looked at the poor creature, then at Adam's face. There was genuine concern there, a tenderness that surprised her. This was not just a business asset to him, he cared about the animal's suffering. "What can I do?" she asked. Adam looked up, surprised. "It is not pleasant work. Tell me what to do." For the next several hours, Beatrice worked alongside Adam, following his instructions as they cleaned and bandaged the cow's wounds, forced medicine down her throat, and tried to keep her comfortable. It was indeed unpleasant work, bloody and smelly, but Beatrice did not flinch. She had nursed her father through his final illness. She could handle this. By mid-afternoon, the cow was resting more comfortably, and Adam declared they had done all they could. Now we just have to wait and see if she pulls through. Beatrice washed up at the pump, her dress ruined despite the apron she had worn. I hope she makes it, so do I. Adam was watching her with an odd expression. You are full of surprises, Miss Sullivan. Beatrice, she corrected him. You said we were not formal here. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it. Beatrice, then. The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest, but she pushed the feeling aside. She was being foolish, reading things into simple kindness. Adam was her employer, nothing more. But as the days passed, Beatrice found it harder to maintain that mental distance. Adam was unlike any man she had known. He was strong and capable, running a successful ranch in this hard country, but he was also thoughtful and surprisingly well-read. In the evenings, after supper, she sometimes found him reading by lamplight, books of poetry and philosophy mixed in with the practical volumes on animal husbandry and land management. One evening, she commented on it, and his expression turned slightly defensive. My mother insisted I have a proper education. She was a schoolteacher back in Missouri before she married my father. Was, Beatrice asked gently. She died 10 years ago, cholera. Adam closed his book. My father followed her 2 years later. I think he died of a broken heart as much as anything. They were deeply devoted to each other. I am sorry for your losses. It was a long time ago, but his eyes said otherwise. They would have liked you, my mother especially. She believed that civilization was built on beauty and kindness as much as strength. The compliment, indirect though it was, warmed Beatrice more than any direct flattery might have. She thought about it later, lying in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the endless prairie wind. What was she doing, letting herself feel things for a man so far above her station? He was a wealthy rancher, owner of thousands of acres. She was his housekeeper, barely a step above a servant. Nothing could come of these growing feelings except heartache. But the heart, Beatrice was learning, did not listen to logic. June arrived, bringing blazing heat and the frantic work of late spring. The cattle needed to be moved to summer grazing, which meant long days for the men and longer days for Beatrice, cooking for extra hands hired on for the drive. She barely saw Adam during this time. He left before dawn and returned after dark, exhausted and covered in dust. The cow they had nursed made a full recovery, which pleased everyone. Frank told Beatrice that Adam had decided the cow was not to be sold, no matter what. He said anything that fights that hard to live has earned the right to die of old age, Frank said with a grin. He is soft-hearted for all that he tries to hide it. Beatrice was in the garden she had started behind the house, pulling weeds in the early morning cool when she heard a horse approach. She stood, shading her eyes, and saw a woman riding up the path to the house. The woman was beautifully dressed in a riding habit that must have cost a fortune, her blonde hair perfectly arranged under a fashionable hat. Beatrice was suddenly, painfully aware of her own appearance. Her old calico work dress, her hair tied back with a simple ribbon, her hands dirty from the garden. She wiped her palms on her apron and went to greet the visitor. "Good morning," Beatrice said. "Can I help you?" The woman looked her up and down with cool, assessing eyes. "I am here to see Adam Jenkins. Is he available?" "He is out with the herd. I am not sure when he will return." The woman's lips thinned in displeasure. "I see. And who are you?" "Beatrice Sullivan. I am the housekeeper here." "Ah, yes. The woman from back east." The tone suggested this was not a compliment. "I am Catherine Whitmore. My father owns the ranch adjacent to this one. Adam and I have an understanding. The words hit Beatrice like a physical blow, though she kept her expression neutral. "I see. Would you like to come inside and wait? I can offer you tea or lemonade." "No, thank you. I will return when Adam is available." Catherine turned her horse with practiced ease. "Please tell him I called. He will know what it is about." Beatrice watched her ride away, her stomach churning. An understanding. What did that mean exactly? Were they courting? Engaged? Why had Adam never mentioned it? She tried to push the questions aside and return to her work, but they nagged at her all day. When Adam came in for supper that evening, she almost mentioned the visit, but something held her back. It was not her place to pry into her employer's personal life, but Adam brought it up himself. "Frank said Catherine Whitmore came by today." "Yes, this morning. I told her you were out with the herd." Adam sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "What did she say?" "Just that she wanted to see you, that you would know what it was about." Beatrice kept her voice carefully neutral. "She mentioned that you have an understanding." "Her father thinks we do," Adam said flatly. "He has been trying to arrange a marriage between Catherine and me for the past 2 years, join our properties, create the largest ranch in the territory, that sort of thing." "I see." Beatrice's hands were trembling slightly as she set his plate down. "And what do you think?" Adam looked up at her, and there was something intense in his gaze. "I think a marriage should be based on more than adjacent property lines." Relief and something else, something hopeful and dangerous, flooded through Beatrice, but she pushed it down. "That is a progressive attitude." "My parents married for love," Adam said quietly. "I watched them build a life together that was about more than just survival or profit. They genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They laughed together every single day. When my mother died, a light went out in my father that never came back." He paused. "If I marry, I want that. I want a partner, not a business arrangement." "Everyone deserves that," Beatrice managed to say. "Do you think so?" His eyes were still on her face. "Even people like me. Rough ranchers who spend their days dealing with cattle and dust, especially people like you." The words came out more vehement than she intended. "You work hard, you treat people fairly, you care about things that matter. Why should you settle for less than real affection?" Something shifted in Adam's expression, something that made Beatrice's breath catch. But before either of them could speak again, they heard boots on the porch and Frank calling out a greeting. The moment broke, and Beatrice hurried back to the kitchen, her heart pounding. That night, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about Adam's words, about the longing she had heard in his voice when he spoke of his parents' marriage. Did he feel the same growing attachment she did? Or was she projecting her own hopeless feelings onto simple kindness? The next Sunday, Adam surprised her by announcing that they were both taking the day off. "Frank can manage the ranch for one day. I am driving you into Oklahoma City. You have been working yourself to exhaustion, and you deserve a break." "That is not necessary," Beatrice protested, though the idea of a day away from the ranch was impossibly appealing. "It is necessary. You have not had a single full day off since you arrived. Besides, I need to pick up some supplies, and you should get fabric and such for yourself. You have been mending your same 3 dresses for 2 months." He was right, though Beatrice was embarrassed he had noticed. "I have been meaning to sew something new, but there has not been time." "Well, today there is time. Be ready in an hour." The drive into Oklahoma City was pleasant, the morning still cool, the prairie alive with wildflowers and birdsong. Adam pointed out landmarks, telling her stories about the land run and the early days of settling the ranch. Beatrice found herself relaxing, laughing at his descriptions of various mishaps and adventures. Oklahoma City had grown even in the 2 months since Beatrice's arrival. More permanent buildings were going up, replacing the tents and temporary structures. Adam handled his business at the feed store while Beatrice explored the dry goods shop, marveling at the selection of fabrics and notions. She chose material for 2 new work dresses and splurged on some ribbon that caught her eye, a deep blue that reminded her of the evening sky. They had lunch at a small restaurant, sitting by the window and watching the busy street. It felt strange and wonderful to be out in public with Adam, almost like a proper outing. Beatrice knew she was being foolish, that this was just a practical errand trip, but she could not help the warmth that spread through her chest every time Adam smiled at something she said. On the drive home, Adam was quieter, his expression thoughtful. Finally, as they neared the ranch, he spoke. "Beatrice, can I ask you something personal, of course? Do you have anyone? Back east, I mean. Anyone you left behind?" "No," Beatrice said, surprised by the question. "There was a man once, a boy really. We walked out together a few times when I was 19. But he married someone else, someone whose father could offer him a partnership in his business. I have not thought about him in years." "Did you love him?" Beatrice considered the question honestly. "I thought I did at the time. But looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of being loved, of mattering to someone. He was not particularly kind or interesting. He just paid attention to me when no one else did." Adam nodded slowly. "I understand that, the loneliness of not mattering to anyone. But you have all of this." Beatrice gestured at the ranch coming into view. "A successful business, employees who respect you. Surely you do not feel lonely." "Success is not the same as connection," Adam said quietly. "I have spent the past 10 years building this ranch, and I am proud of what I have accomplished. But at the end of the day, I still eat dinner alone and sleep in an empty house. Sometimes I wonder what the point of all of this is if there is no one to share it with." Beatrice's throat felt tight. "I think the work has value in itself, but yes, sharing your life with someone does make it richer." "Would you want that?" Adam asked. "If the right person came along?" "Yes," Beatrice admitted, "though I have tried not to hope for it too much. Hope can be painful when circumstances are against you." Adam pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the barn but made no move to get down. "What if circumstances were different than you thought?" Beatrice looked at him, her heart starting to pound. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I have been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks now." Adam turned to face her fully. "You must have noticed, Beatrice, the way I find excuses to stay in the kitchen after supper, the way I look for you first thing when I come in from the range. You are not just my housekeeper. You have not been for a long time now." "Adam," Beatrice whispered, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "I know I am not the easiest man to live with. I work too hard and I am better with cattle than people most of the time. But you make this house feel like a home. You make me remember that there are things worth working for beyond just survival and profit." He took a breath. "I am trying to say that I have feelings for you, Beatrice, deep feelings. And if you feel even a fraction of the same, I would like permission to court you properly." Tears were spilling down Beatrice's cheeks before she could stop them. "I feel the same," she managed to say. "I have tried so hard not to, tried to convince myself I was being foolish, but I feel the same." Adam's face transformed with joy and relief. He reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. "Then why are you crying?" "Because I am happy, you foolish man." Beatrice laughed through her tears. "I am crying because I am happy." He smiled, that rare, full smile that made him look years younger. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." Adam cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly, with a tenderness that made Beatrice's heart feel like it might burst. It was nothing like the clumsy attempts of the boy from her past. This was a kiss from a man who knew what he wanted and valued what he had found. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right. I want to court you properly, give you time to be sure. But Beatrice, I need you to know that I am already certain. I want to marry you. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build something real and lasting with you by my side." "I am certain too," Beatrice said. "I have never been more certain of anything." They sat there for a long moment, just holding each other, before finally climbing down from the wagon. Frank emerged from the barn, took one look at their faces, and grinned widely. "About time," he said. "The boys and I had a bet going on how long it would take you two to figure it out." Adam laughed. "And who won?" "Nobody yet. We all guessed it would take you longer." The news spread through the ranch like wildfire, and the reaction was universally positive. The Hands were genuinely happy for them. Frank declared it the best thing to happen to the ranch in years, and everyone seemed to relax in a way Beatrice had not even realized they had been tense. Apparently, she and Adam had been the only ones who had not seen what was developing between them. The courtship was sweet and surprisingly old-fashioned given that they lived in the same house. Adam insisted on calling on her properly in the evening, sitting with her in the parlor and talking for hours. They discovered shared loves of literature and music, debated politics and philosophy, and told each other stories of their respective childhoods. Adam taught her to ride properly, and they began taking evening rides together across the prairie, watching the spectacular sunsets that painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. 2 weeks into their courtship, Catherine Whitmore returned. Beatrice answered the door to find her standing on the porch, her expression haughty. "I need to speak with Adam," Catherine announced. "I will get him." Beatrice went to find Adam in his office where he was doing the ranch books. "Catherine Whitmore is here to see you." Adam's jaw tightened. "I suppose this is overdue. Will you stay with me? I want her to understand how things stand." They went to the parlor together, where Catherine was examining the room with barely concealed disdain. Her expression shifted when she saw Beatrice standing beside Adam, his hand lightly touching the small of Beatrice's back. "Catherine," Adam said, "what can I do for you?" "My father sent me to discuss the merger proposal. He has some new terms that he thinks will be advantageous to both families." "There is not going to be a merger, Catherine. I have told your father this repeatedly." "Do not be hasty, Adam. This is an excellent business opportunity." "I am not interested in a business marriage," Adam said firmly. "I am courting someone and I intend to marry her." Catherine's eyes flickered to Beatrice with barely concealed contempt. "The housekeeper." "Adam, be serious. What can she possibly offer you? She has no property, no connections, nothing of value." "She offers me everything that matters," Adam said, his voice hard. "Kindness, intelligence, a genuine partnership. All the things your father's proposal lacks." "You are making a mistake," Catherine said coldly. "My father will not take this well." "Your father does not control me or my land. Please do not come here again, Catherine." "I wish you well, but there is nothing more to discuss." Catherine's face flushed with anger, but she maintained her composure. "You will regret this." She swept out, leaving a tense silence behind. Beatrice let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Do you think there will be trouble?" "Harold Whitmore is not a good loser," Adam admitted. "But he cannot force me to marry his daughter no matter how much he blusters." He pulled Beatrice close. "Do not worry, I will not let anyone come between us." Despite his assurances, Beatrice felt uneasy. She had seen the rage in Catherine's eyes, the humiliation of rejection. Women like that, with power and connections, could cause problems. Her worries proved justified a week later when Frank came to the house looking grim. "We have a problem. Someone cut the fence on the eastern pasture." 20 head of cattle wandered onto Whitmore's land, and he is claiming they are his now. Adam's face darkened. That fence was fine yesterday. Someone cut it deliberately. That is what I figure, Frank said. And we all know who benefits from making you look like a careless rancher who cannot control his stock. Adam rode over to confront Harold Whitmore, returning hours later in a cold fury. He refused to return the cattle, said if I could not keep them on my land, I did not deserve them. And he implied that there would be more accidents if I did not reconsider his proposal. That is theft, Beatrice said. Can you not go to the law? The nearest marshal is in Oklahoma City, and he will not side with me over Harold Whitmore. The man has connections and money. Adam paced the kitchen like a caged animal. I cannot believe he would stoop this low. Over the next few weeks, the harassment continued. More fence sabotage, cattle spooked in the night, supplies that went missing. It was never enough to be truly devastating, but it was a constant drain on time and resources. The men were exhausted from the extra vigilance required, and tension ran high. Beatrice watched Adam grow increasingly stressed, the lines on his face deepening. She did her best to provide comfort, making sure he ate properly and got enough rest, but she felt helpless in the face of Harold Whitmore's vindictive campaign. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Adam said quietly, I could end this by giving in. By marrying Catherine and merging the ranches like Whitmore wants. Beatrice's heart clenched. Is that what you want? No. God, no. Adam took her hand. But I hate seeing this place, these people I care about, under constant threat, if sacrificing my happiness would protect them. No, Beatrice said firmly. You cannot give in to bullies, that only encourages them. Besides, what makes you think Whitmore would stop even if you did marry Catherine? A man like that is never satisfied. Adam looked at her with something like wonder. How are you so brave? You have the most to lose if this goes badly, yet you are the one staying steady. I grew up watching my father make compromises to keep peace, Beatrice said. It never worked. Weak people take advantage of kindness. Sometimes you have to stand firm even when it is hard. We will stand firm together then, Adam said and kissed her gently. The solution came from an unexpected source. A few days later, a federal marshal rode up to the ranch house, accompanied by several deputies. Beatrice's heart sank, thinking Whitmore had somehow convinced the law to side with him. But the marshal asked for Adam and when he appeared said, Mr. Jenkins, we have been investigating reports of fence cutting and cattle theft in this area. We have evidence that Harold Whitmore has been orchestrating a campaign of harassment against you and several other smaller ranchers in an attempt to force them off their land or into unfavorable agreements. Adam blinked in surprise. Evidence. One of his own hands got a conscience and came forward, gave us a full account of everything Whitmore ordered him to do. The marshal tipped his hat. We are arresting Whitmore today. His daughter is being questioned as well, as she may have been involved. I wanted to let you know personally and apologize that this went on as long as it did. After the marshal left, Adam stood on the porch looking stunned. Beatrice came to stand beside him, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. It is over, he said, his voice muffled against her hair. Thank God it is over. We stood firm, Beatrice reminded him. You did not compromise yourself. I am proud of you. I could not have done it without you. Adam pulled back to look at her face. Beatrice, I do not want to wait any longer. Marry me, please. Let us start our life together properly. Yes, Beatrice said, joy bubbling up inside her. Yes, absolutely yes. They were married a month later in the small church in Oklahoma City, with Frank as Adam's best man and the pastor's wife standing up with Beatrice. It was a simple ceremony. Nothing like the elaborate weddings Beatrice had occasionally imagined as a girl, but it was perfect. When Adam placed the ring on her finger and promised to love and cherish her for the rest of his life, Beatrice felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The ranch hands threw them a party back at the ranch, with a fiddler brought in from town and enough food to feed an army. They danced on the porch under the stars, and for the first time since arriving in Oklahoma territory, Beatrice felt like she was truly home. That night, as they prepared for bed in what was now their shared room, Beatrice remembered the quilt. She retrieved it from the bottom drawer where it had lain since her first day at the ranch. "I made this," she told Adam, unfolding it carefully. "It took me 6 months, working every spare moment I had. I did not know why I was making it at the time, what future I thought I was stitching together. But I think maybe, somehow, I was making it for this moment. For you." Adam ran his hands over the intricate pattern, his expression awed. "Beatrice, this is beautiful. This is a work of art." "It is a wedding ring pattern," Beatrice said softly. "Every circle links to the next, supporting and strengthening. That is what I want our marriage to be." Adam pulled her close, wrapping them both in the quilt. The fabric cocooned them in warmth and color, a tangible representation of love and hope. "We will build that together," he promised, "supporting and strengthening each other for all our days." They made love for the first time that night, gentle and sweet and slightly awkward as first times often are, but filled with so much care and affection that Beatrice wept again with the overwhelming rightness of it all. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the quilt, talking softly until sleep claimed them. The first year of their marriage was a time of adjustment and joy. Beatrice learned the full scope of running a ranch household, managing not just the cooking and cleaning but the complex web of relationships that made the ranch function. She discovered she had a talent for organization and planning, and Adam increasingly relied on her input for business decisions. Their partnership was genuine and deep. Adam respected Beatrice's intelligence and sought her advice on everything from which supplies to order to which hands to hire. Beatrice, in turn, supported Adam's vision for the ranch, offering encouragement during setbacks and celebrating victories. The physical side of their marriage grew more comfortable and satisfying as they learned each other's bodies and preferences. Some nights they came together with urgent passion, and other nights with slow, tender exploration. Always, they fell asleep wrapped together under the quilt Beatrice had made, the wedding ring stitched into the fabric a nightly reminder of their intertwined lives. 8 months after their wedding, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She told Adam over breakfast, watching nervously for his reaction. His face transformed with wonder, and he swept her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and the summer heat made her miserable. But Adam was attentive and worried, constantly asking if she was all right, if she needed anything. Frank took over more of the cooking duties, and the ranch hands competed to be the most helpful, bringing her wildflowers and going out of their way to make her smile. Their son was born on a cold February morning in 1891, after a long and difficult labor. Beatrice had never experienced pain like that, and there were moments she was certain she would not survive. But Adam stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragements, his face pale but determined. When the baby finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Adam wept openly. "He is perfect," he said, cradling his son with shaking hands. "Beatrice, he is perfect." They named him Samuel after Adam's father. Samuel Jenkins was a healthy, hungry baby who kept them both awake for the first few months of his life. Beatrice was exhausted in a way she had never experienced, but every time she looked at her son or saw Adam holding him with such tender care, her heart swelled with love. The ranch prospered as Oklahoma Territory grew and developed. Adam made smart decisions about breeding stock and land management, and his reputation as an honest, fair dealer brought him steady business. He hired more permanent hands and built a larger bunkhouse. He purchased additional land when it became available, always consulting with Beatrice about whether they could afford it and whether it was a wise investment. When Samuel was 2 years old, Beatrice became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter Anne arrived with considerably less drama than her brother. She was a calm baby with Adam's gray eyes and Beatrice's dark hair, and her father fell instantly, hopelessly in love with her. "I am outnumbered now," Adam said, holding Anne while Samuel climbed into his lap as well. 3 against 1. "You love it," Beatrice said, and it was true. Adam had blossomed into fatherhood in a way that surprised even him. He was patient and playful with his children, teaching Samuel about the ranch and carrying Anne everywhere in the crook of his arm. Life fell into a rhythm over the years. The work was still hard, the climate still harsh, but they faced everything together. Droughts came and they conserved water carefully, supported each other through the stress. Cattle prices fluctuated and they adjusted their plans accordingly. Samuel started school in Oklahoma City, riding in with Frank twice a week. Anne followed a few years later, proud and excited to be like her big brother. The quilt remained on their bed, growing softer with washing and use. On cold winter nights, all 4 of them would sometimes pile into the big bed, wrapped together under the wedding ring pattern, telling stories and laughing. Those were the moments Beatrice treasured most, when her entire world was contained in that bed, under that quilt, safe and warm and loved. When Oklahoma Territory became a state in 1907, they celebrated with a party at the ranch. Samuel was 16 by then, tall and serious, already taking on significant responsibilities around the ranch. Anne was 13, clever and outspoken, with plans to become a teacher like her grandmother had been. They stood with their parents, watching fireworks light up the sky over Oklahoma City in the distance, and Beatrice reflected on how much had changed since she arrived 18 years earlier with nothing but a carpet bag and a quilt. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "That I am grateful," Beatrice said, "for all of this, for you, for the life we have built." "I am the grateful one," Adam said. "You took a chance on a dusty rancher and his rough life. You turned a house into a home. You gave me a family and a purpose beyond just surviving." He kissed her temple. "Everything good in my life started the day you arrived. We built it together," Beatrice reminded him, "supporting and strengthening just like we promised." Over the following years, Beatrice and Adam watched their children grow into capable adults. Samuel took over more and more of the ranch operations, proving himself a worthy successor to his father's legacy. He married a sweet girl named Emily from Oklahoma City when he was 21, bringing her home to the ranch where she learned the ropes from Beatrice with the same dedication Beatrice had once shown. Anne pursued her dream of teaching, attending college in Oklahoma City and returning to teach at the local school. She married at 24 to a lawyer named Thomas who respected her intelligence and independence. They built a house in town but visited the ranch every Sunday for dinner. Adam and Beatrice gradually stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch, though they remained involved and invested. They took up new hobbies, traveled occasionally to places they had always wanted to see, and spent long evenings on the porch watching the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build something beautiful on. You have any regrets?" Adam asked one evening when they were both in their 50s, still healthy and active but definitely slowing down. Beatrice thought about it honestly. "I regret not standing up to my father more when I was younger. I regret the years I wasted being afraid to hope for anything better. But everything from the moment I stepped off that stage coach. No, not a single regret." "Good." Adam reached for her hand, his grip still strong. "Because I want to do it all again in the next life. Find you, court you, marry you, build a life together." "That is quite romantic for a dusty rancher," Beatrice teased. "I learned from the best." Adam pulled her close. "You taught me that love is not just a feeling but a choice we make every day. To show up, to work together, to value each other even when things are hard." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. The same passionate affection that had sustained them through decades of marriage still burning steady and true. By the time Samuel and Emily's first child arrived, a boy they named Adam after his grandfather, Beatrice and Adam were well established as the beloved patriarch and matriarch of a sprawling family. They hosted Sunday dinners that grew larger every year as more grandchildren arrived. The house was always full of noise and laughter and love. The quilt, now ancient and delicate, had been retired from daily use. It lay carefully preserved in a cedar chest, brought out only for special occasions. When Samuel's Adam was born, Beatrice wrapped the baby in it for his blessing, and Emily gasped at the intricate beauty of the stitching. "This is incredible," Emily said. "Did you really make this yourself?" "A long time ago," Beatrice said, running her hand over the familiar pattern. "When I was alone in Philadelphia, dreaming of a better life." "And you found it," Emily said softly. "I found more than I ever dreamed possible." Beatrice looked around the crowded house, at her husband chatting with their son, at Anne holding her own baby daughter, at all the family they had created together. "I found everything." As they aged into their 60s and 70s, Adam and Beatrice remained devoted companions. Adam's hair turned completely gray, and Beatrice's dark locks became streaked with silver. But to each other, they were still the young people who had fallen in love over biscuits and ranch work. They held hands constantly, stole kisses when they thought no one was looking, and still slept wrapped together under a newer quilt that Anne had made them, though they kept Beatrice's original nearby. Adam's health began to fail first. A lifetime of hard physical labor caught up with him, his joints stiffening with arthritis, his heart growing weaker. He bore it with the same stoic grace he had faced every other challenge, though Beatrice could see the frustration in his eyes when his body would not do what he demanded of it. One evening, when Adam was 78 and struggling to breathe after a brief walk, he said to Beatrice, "I am not afraid of dying, but I hate the thought of leaving you." "Then do not think about it," Beatrice said firmly, though her own heart was breaking. "Focus on right now. On this moment with me." "Always with you," Adam agreed. "In this life and whatever comes next." He died peacefully 3 weeks later in their bed with Beatrice holding his hand. His last words were, "Thank you for the life you gave me." The grief was enormous and consuming. Beatrice had loved this man for over 3 decades, built an entire world with him. The house felt empty without his presence, the bed too large, the silence oppressive. Samuel and Anne wanted her to come stay with one of them, but Beatrice refused. This was her home, filled with memories of Adam in every corner. She would not abandon it, but she also would not let grief consume her completely. Adam had taught her too well about the importance of living fully, of finding joy even in difficult times. She threw herself into her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, teaching them to cook and garden, telling them stories about the early days of the territory, about their grandfather and the love story that had built the family they all belonged to. On what would have been their 40th wedding anniversary, Beatrice took out the wedding ring quilt and spread it on the bed. She lay down, wrapping herself in the fabric that had wrapped her and Adam together for so many years, and let herself remember their first kiss in the wagon, their wedding night. Every cold winter they had huddled under this quilt, every child they had snuggled with under its warmth. The quilt smelled faintly of cedar and age, but to Beatrice it smelled like love, like home, like everything that mattered. She lived another 5 years, active and engaged until the very end. When she died at 82, peacefully in her sleep, Samuel and Anne found her in the big bed, wrapped in the quilt she had made so long ago in a Philadelphia tenement, dreaming of a better life. They buried her next to Adam on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone that read Beatrice Sullivan Jenkins, 1866-1948, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She built beauty from nothing. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations. The house was preserved and eventually became a historical site, the Jenkins Ranch, showcasing life in early Oklahoma. The wedding ring quilt hung in a climate-controlled case in what had been Adam and Beatrice's bedroom, a testament to one woman's hope and the love story it had helped create. Visitors came from all over to see the ranch and hear the story. How a young woman arrived from the east with nothing but a quilt she had sewn herself. How a lonely rancher had wrapped himself in it and her love, finding not just warmth but a partner, a companion, a true love that lasted a lifetime. How together they had built something that lasted far beyond their own years, a legacy of love and hard work and faith in each other. School children on field trips would press their faces close to the glass case, marveling at the intricate stitching of the quilt, at the wedding rings that seemed to glow in the museum lighting. Their teachers would tell them about Beatrice Sullivan Jenkins, about how she came west with nothing and built a life through determination, skill, and love. She changed history, the teachers would say. Not through great battles or political movements, but through small, consistent acts of courage and kindness. Through choosing love even when it seemed impractical. Through building beauty even in harsh circumstances. And late at night, when the museum was closed and the ranch was quiet, some swore they could feel the presence of that love still, warming the old house like a quilt on a cold night. The love of a rancher and his wife, who had found each other against all odds and built a world together that still stood strong, generations later. The wedding rings in the quilt pattern still glowed softly in the moonlight streaming through the windows. Circles interlinked and eternal, supporting and strengthening each other just as Beatrice had intended all those years ago. A promise kept, a love honored, a legacy that would last as long as the prairie winds blew across the Oklahoma land. Their story became legend in those parts. Old-timers would tell it to young couples just starting out, reminding them that real love was built through work and commitment, through showing up day after day, through wrapping yourself in each other's hopes and dreams until you could not tell where one person ended and the other began. And always, the story ended the same way. She arrived with a quilt she had sewn herself. The rancher wrapped himself in it and her love, and together they built something that lasted forever.